The night began the way all gentle nights do, softly, almost shyly, as if afraid to disturb the peace it had so carefully laid over the small wooden house. Strings of warm garden lights glowed like constellations lowered just for this evening, each bulb trembling with the faint breeze that wandered in from the grapefruit grove. The air smelled faintly of leaves, wood, and something hopeful, as if the world itself sensed what was about to unfold. Inside that golden glow, a story years in the making was preparing to step into the open. James and Deep, after seasons of trials, heartbreak, rebuilding, and choosing each other through storms both spoken and silent, were finally standing on the threshold of the wedding they had always imagined, simple, quiet, handmade. A ceremony not meant for grandeur, but for truth. It was the kind of night people don't just remember, they return to, again and again. The garden had never looked like this before. Not on the mornings Deep swept grapefruit leaves into neat little piles, humming softly as the sun warmed her shoulders. Not on the afternoons when James fixed the wooden steps, pausing now and then to watch Deep hang laundry in the breeze. Not even on the night they moved in, trembling from exhaustion and relief, holding onto each other as rain tapped against the roof. Tonight, the garden glowed in a way that felt almost unreal. Lanterns lined the bamboo trellis like strings of quiet stars. Soft yellow bulbs hung between the trees, turning branches into ribbons of light. Someone, likely Mrs. Hong, with her soft but decisive touch, had placed 2 white candles under the roof, their flames thin and steady as if the night itself were holding its breath. James adjusted his shirt cuffs for the 5th time. They weren't crooked, he just didn't know what else to do with his hands. His mother had said he looked handsome. His father, wherever he was, had said nothing at all. But it wasn't his mother or father he was thinking of, it was Deep. Deep, somewhere behind the house, preparing with trembling fingers and little Nhi buzzing around her like an excited sparrow. Just the thought made his chest tighten. He felt braver than he had been in years, and more fragile too. There weren't many guests, just the ones who had walked beside them through the long seasons. The elderly neighbors who brought fruit during hard times, the workers who had celebrated small milestones with them, the shop owner who always slipped Deep the best vegetables, and Mrs. Hong, whose pastel dress softened her usual sternness. They spoke quietly, as if respecting the scale of the moment. This wasn't a wedding meant for spectacle. It was meant for truth, for the kind of love stitched together through ordinary days. Then a sound drifted from the side of the house. Soft steps. A child's whisper. A breath held somewhere in the crowd. James turned, and the world stopped. Deep emerged from the back door. For a single suspended second, everything stilled. The lanterns, the leaves, even the hush of crickets. As if the world agreed, this was the moment to stop and simply look. Her dress, simple and white, wasn't new. But Mrs. Hong had pressed it tenderly that afternoon, smoothing each fold with quiet devotion. Deep's hair fell softly over her shoulders, lifted gently by the breeze. Little Nhi clung to her hand, wearing a ribbon she had chosen with great seriousness. Deep paused at the edge of the garden, taking in the path of candles, the warm lights, the guests, and finally, James. Her breath trembled, just slightly, but enough for James to feel it across the distance between them. He took a step toward her, then stopped, struck by the fragility of the world in that moment. Nhi ran ahead first, she always did. "Daddy," she called. James lifted her into his arms. "You look beautiful," he whispered. "Me or Mommy?" she demanded. "Both," he said, and somehow, impossibly, it was true in two different ways. When Deep reached them, James murmured, "You're shaking." "I know," she whispered. "Are you afraid?" "No," she said, eyes soft. "Just." Finally, the ceremony began simply. No grand stage, no microphones, no scripts. Just two people standing under warm lights while Nhi insisted on standing between them because "I'm family too." Laughter rippled through the garden. James took Deep's hands. They were cold. "I didn't know I could build a home," he said softly. "Not until you walked into it." Deep's eyes glistened. "And I didn't know I could stay," she whispered, "until you proved home isn't a place, it's someone who waits." The words settled over the garden like a blessing. Nhi tugged James's sleeve. "Daddy, the rings." James laughed and reached into his pocket. Two simple silver bands. Silver meant to last through harvests, traffic, tired nights, morning porridge, small fights, soft apologies. Just as Deep extended her hand, a breeze shifted. The light flickered, and the night, so steady moments before, began to change. Someone at the back of the garden turned. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, crossed the gravel. A figure stepped past the grapefruit trees, the warm lights catching the edge of a worn jacket. Shoulders tired from travel, hands clasped as if unsure they deserved to open. Then the face emerged. Everything froze. James's ring hovered above Deep's finger. Mrs. Hong stood so abruptly her chair scraped the stone. Guests went silent without knowing why. It was James's father, but not the version they remembered, sharp, distant, a man always on the verge of leaving. This man was smaller somehow, softer at the edges, carrying miles of hesitation in the lines of his face. He stopped several paces away, he bowed his head, a gesture that carried more apology than words could bear. James, he said, voice landing softly, as if afraid it might break on impact. James's throat tightened. Years lived inside that one sound, years of uneven phone calls, broken plans, and quiet disappointment. You came, James finally whispered. His father nodded. I didn't know if I should. Your mother didn't ask me to. She didn't push. But I heard your wedding was tonight. He swallowed, and I realized I didn't want to miss the moment my son stands with the woman he chose. A hush settled over the garden, not awkward, just reverent. Deep felt James's fingers tighten around hers. She could feel the child he had once been, and the man he had become. NHI whispered, Mommy, who is that? Deep knelt. Someone important to Daddy. Someone he didn't know would come. James stepped forward. Just one step, but one that shortened a distance years long. You can stay, he said quietly. If you want, his father's breath shook. I would like that. If you'll have me. That was it, not forgiveness. Not yet, but the door was no longer closed. Mrs. Hong openly wiped her eyes. The guests exhaled. The garden breathed again. James and Deep turned back to the candles. The rings, waiting in both hands, gleamed again in the lantern light. James slid the band onto Deep's finger. She slid the other onto his. The lights seemed to flicker in agreement. NHI clapped wildly. Warm applause rose, not loud, but full of hearts widening. James touched his forehead to Deep's. You're home, he whispered. So are you, she breathed back. Music drifted from a small speaker. They danced slowly, Deep's head resting on his shoulder, NHI circling them like a comet with her ribbon. It wasn't a grand reception. Just food cooked by neighbors, mismatched cups, warm tea, laughter rising like steam. Are you happy? James whispered. Yes, Deep murmured. It feels like the world is finally gentle with us. Maybe, he said, kissing her hair, we learned how to be gentle with it first. Later, James's father approached quietly and placed an envelope on the railing. Inside was a photograph. James as a boy, taken on a day his father had always regretted missing. James didn't open it. He didn't need to. He rested a hand over it, as if touching an old scar he no longer feared. The lantern swayed softly, and the garden, their garden, held them all in one unbroken circle. A circle that, finally, had room for everyone who chose to stay.